Welcome to another edition of Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. Thank you all for being here. We got a lot to discuss. President Biden decided to come out of the bunker and answer some questions. They touched on only a couple of issues. And if you notice, there are two things that as we go through what happened during this press conference, there's two things I want to know if you guys picked up on. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but at the end, the first person to call in and tell me or email me and tell me what was missing is going to win a gift certificate. We're going to see how well some of you are paying attention or did pay attention to the press conference, because I found it absolutely amazing. So if you want to call in, 203-679-9610. And our email is straighttalkjv@gmail.com. And I will be checking that out throughout the show. So if you want to just email something, you're more than welcome to do that too. So let's dive right on in to this press conference. This press conference was very interesting because in some ways the president was trying to blame Trump for all the bad things. And he was trying to take credit for all the good things that Trump did. And I was surprised that a couple of times he was taking the task on trying to pass blame, especially when it came to immigration. So we have a couple of clips that we're going to go through. Obviously, we can't go through everything, but I wish we could. So I'm going to show you the video because I also wanted to see if, again, you pick up on a couple of things. So, and if you don't, then obviously I'm going to tell you at the end. But I think this audience is pretty good, and you guys are going to pick up on it. So let's dive in. So we're going to pull up, give me number 7 first, and we'll go from there. I gotta get you to nice sound. You guys want to hear it. So for you guys who are not listening on the podcast and listen to the video, I'm going to shoot you guys the video too so you can see it.
On December 8th, I indicated that I hope to get 100 million shots in people's arms in my first 100 days. We met that goal last week by day 58, 42 days ahead of schedule. Now today I'm setting a second goal, and that is we will, by my 100th day in office, have administered 200 million shots in people's arms.
So let's talk about that, because that's very interesting. So he's saying he had 100 million shots in people's arms by 58 days in. Who did that? Who did that? That wasn't Joe Biden. That wasn't Democrats. That was Donald Trump in warp speed. And if he thinks he's going to get 200 million shots within his first 100 days, that again will be thanks to Donald Trump. These guys can't get themselves out of a wet paper bag in a matter of 100 days. They think they're going to get all the logistical aspects down within 100 days. This was all done for them. But he ain't going to say, hey, thanks, Donald Trump. You really saved our ass. I mean, come on. Who really believes that Joe Biden, within 58 days, put everything together when we have a situation on the border that he has absolutely no plan for? And we'll get into that too. But of course, it was Donald Trump, that evil SOB. But yet, if you pay attention, you're going to see in some points that President Biden tries to make, he's saying Donald Trump is right. Republicans were right. 100 million shots. Think about that. 100 million shots in 58 days. Thanks to Project Warp Speed and Donald Trump. Ridiculous that he's going to sit there and try to take credit for it. And the sad thing is, there's going to be people that are uninformed that are going to believe it. They're going to be like, "Oh, he really did it." When no, he didn't. So let's move to clip number 8. Give me 8. And this is our dear president talking about stimulus payments coming in. So we're going to give you that one right now.
100 million payments of $1,400 have gone into people's bank accounts. That's real money in people's pockets, bringing relief instantly almost. And millions more will be getting their money very soon. One final note. Since we passed the American Rescue Plan, we're starting to see new signs of hope.
So let's start with the first part of what he's talking about. So he's saying, all right, well, now we have $1,400 checks going out. That's not to most of the taxpayers. Those are to most of his supporters. Because the hardworking people that he's talking about, they aren't getting a stimulus check. I know I'm not getting a stimulus check. I know there's many of you out there that aren't getting stimulus checks. But I tell you what it is doing. It's costing me, and it's costing many of you out there, $14,690. Because that's what it costs per taxpayer. So if you're telling me in a good investment when 8.5 million people less are on unemployment, that I should invest $14,000 for some people to get back $1,400, anyone's going to tell you that's a horrible investment. But as we've talked about in previous shows, they need to give you these payments, and they don't want to give you a big one because they need you to be dependent on them. And if you start trying to be self-sufficient, that's not good for Democrats. They can't allow that. They need to make sure that you need them so they get your vote. Let's continue on with what nonsense he's talking about.
In our economy. Since it was passed, a majority of economic forecasters have significantly increased their projections on the economic growth that's going to take place this year. They're now projecting it will exceed 6%, a 6% growth in GDP.
Okay, so we're going to get a growth in GDP. Again, if you're looking short term, yes, that is an absolute correct statement. You're about to pump $1 trillion into the economy. What do you think GDP is going to do? But the question we're going to have in 6 months is, how do you keep it going? How do you keep it going? 6% GDP is not sustainable. Not. But again, you inject $1 trillion, and of course it's going to go up. So, he's trying to sell a bag of goods that, unless you don't know anything about economics, you would believe this crap and sit there and say, oh, Joe, you're way to go, Joe. At the same time, you're taking it in the backside because it's not sustainable. And what's going to happen? They're going to try to pass another stimulus package. They're going to try to pass another one. Just so you keep getting your check. The GDP keeps growing, but our debt goes crazy. Our debt goes crazy. And China becomes more and more powerful. Because they're not spending all this money. We don't need to do all this. This last stimulus check, it should have went to payroll taxes and to unemployment. You don't need to spend all this money. It's unnecessary. Especially when $900 billion is going overseas. We have another 86.9 going to house illegal immigrants. But yet, we have homeless families, homeless kids walking our friggin' streets. But they don't give a shit about that. They don't. Let's just be honest. They could care less. Because they want the illegals coming in because of their votes. That's exactly why they're going to keep pushing mail-in voting. And we're going to get into voting rights because that was a topic of discussion during the press conference. So let's move on. Let me make sure I'm crossing these off. This is probably my favorite clip and the scariest clip. Because if people believe this crap, this country's in some serious friggin' trouble. Serious trouble. Here we go.
Too many Americans out of work, too many families hurting, and they still have a lot of work to do. But I can say to you, the American
Scariest
people,
words.
help is here and hope is on the way.
That
Now,
is the biggest bunch of nonsense I've ever heard in my life. If that is what the American people want, the government coming to help, we are in some shit. Quickly. Reagan said it best. The 9 most scariest words. Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Ladies and gentlemen, don't believe that. They're here to take your freedom in exchange for money and votes. What the hell can the government give you that you can't do yourself? What? And any liberal sitting out here on this podcast should call me right now and tell me what the government should be doing for them that they can't do for themselves. 203-679-9610. That phone is going to remain silent because there is no way in hell that anyone could justify it. When you want the government to be your parent, your daddy, your mommy, your brother, your sister, this country has failed. It's sad, but it's very true. Why would anybody want that? And the fact that he says it, and he says it consistently, should alarm everybody. And trust me, we're going to get a front row seat tomorrow because you have the Vice President Harris coming to New Haven tomorrow to sit there and gloat about giving you free money. And not just a stimulus check. That's not what she's here for. She's here with our good friend, Comrade DeLauro, to sit there and talk about the $3,000 payment to every not even taxpayer, because I tell you what, your taxpayers aren't going to get it. But they want to give $3,000 for the child tax credit, which you don't need to work in order to get. But they want to give $3,000 because obviously it's their voters. And they're going to the inner cities to do it. Because they need their vote. But you hard-working taxpayers, you ain't getting crap. So now they're just going to give you money for having children. Is that what our government's here for? To play daddy? To play mommy? We are in scary times. Scary times, ladies and gentlemen. People need to figure out what side they're on. Because honestly, if we keep down this road, I don't see how this goes nicely. It's just ridiculous. So this is the next one is the first time he's really given a challenging question, but not really. So his answer was interesting to me, which is why we pulled this one. So go ahead and give me clip number 10.
People are coming, talking about in-country problems, saying that it happens every year. You blamed the last administration. Sir, I just got back last night from a reporting trip to the border where I met 9-year-old Josel, who walked here from Honduras by himself, along with another little boy. He had that phone number on him, and we were able to call his family. His mother says that she sent her son to this country because she believes that you are not deporting unaccompanied minors like her son. That's why she sent him alone from Honduras. So, sir, you blame the last administration, but is your messaging in saying that these children are and will be allowed to stay in this country and work their way through this process, encouraging families like Josel's to come?
So let's just stop here for a second and just talk about her question and her experience. They're sending 9 and 10-year-olds by themselves on that multi-thousand. Usually they're about almost 2,000 miles. By themselves. Because they know that Biden's going to let them in. But the question is, what are going to happen to them? Because as she just said, his mother is still in Honduras. So what the hell is he going to do up here at 9? At 9. It's heartbreaking. It's crazy to even imagine it. But here's his answer.
Well, look, the idea that I'm going to say, which I would never do, if an unaccompanied child ends up at the border, we're just going to let him starve to death and stay on the other side. No previous administration did that either, except Trump.
Okay, so that's just bullshit. And the fact that he said it irritates me, and it just baffles me because everybody knew what Trump was doing. If you're an unaccompanied minor and your parents are back in their home country, you're going back. So that's why Under Trump, they never sent their kids. They never sent their kids up here unaccompanied because they knew they were going back. So you're going to spend all your money given to the cartels nonetheless just to get sent back. They knew that under Trump. They didn't know that under Biden. And like the mother said, he wasn't sending people back. So why wouldn't they send their children on that dangerous journey? Because remember, this is a 9-year-old who's being sent back. Let's finish the nonsense he considered.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. That's why I've asked the Vice President of the United States yesterday to be the lead person on dealing with focusing on the fundamental reasons why people leave Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador
Now,
in the first place.
remember that statement.
It's because of earthquakes, floods. It's because of lack of food. It's because of gang violence. It's because of a whole range of things.
Isn't that every inner city in America? Didn't he just describe every inner city in America? That's what I just heard. But it gets better.
Things that when I was vice president had the same obligation to deal with unaccompanied children, I was able to get it slowed up significantly by working with the heads of state of those communities to do things like in one of the major cities, the reason people were leaving is they couldn't walk the street because their kids were getting beat up or shot or gang violence. Well, what I was able to do is not give money to the head of state because so many are corrupt, but I was able to say, okay, you need lighting in the streets to change things? I'll put the lighting in. We got a contractor. We got the type of lighting. We paid directly to the contractor. Did not.
Now, real quick, because when he says that, he's not saying that he did it, even though he just did. He's saying you did. You put the lights in. But the bigger question is, if he already took care of this problem, why doesn't he send Harris? Shouldn't he just do what he did before? And if the issues were they had no lighting, well, he already put lights up, he said. So that shouldn't be the issue. So are now we responsible as Americans to build infrastructure in these countries? Or should you do what Donald Trump said and said to these world leaders, get your shit in order, stop the migrants from coming up, or we're canceling all your money? And what happened? They did it. You didn't have this problem. Let's continue on with the nonsense.
Go through the government, and violent crime significantly was reduced in that city. Fewer people sought to leave. When this hurricane occurred, the 2 hurricanes, instead of us going down and helping in a major way so that people would not have a reason to want to leave in the first place because they didn't have housing or water or sustenance, we did nothing. We're going to do a lot in our...
So what he's talking about is when just a couple years ago, when they got hit with 2 hurricanes, but he just said we did nothing. Humanitarian aid was sent. $56 billion was sent to Central America to help, because that's what America does. But it's not our job to rebuild your country. That's their job. It's funny how Democrats want to do all this rebuilding in other countries, but don't want to do shit here. Because, again, they need a permanent underclass. Without a permanent underclass, the whole Democratic logic and their whole system of government goes south. When you're self-reliant and you're not looking to the government for a handout, you turn into a Republican. And more Hispanics, more and more African Americans, more and more Native Americans, and Asians aren't falling for the nonsense the Democrats are trying to shovel it. So that's why, again, Democrats love illegal immigration. It's a new permanent underclass. That's their votes. That's why we talked about it last week. If you turn around and tell the Democrats, yeah, we'll allow them in, but they can't vote, they're like, oh, no. Nope. They won't go for a deal like that. Because they know what's coming. People are getting woke. And things are going to change. And they know it. That's why they don't care what's really going on down there. Let's finish up the
administration. We're going to be spending that $700+ million a year to change the life and circumstances of why people leave in the first place. That mother did not sit around on the kitchen table and say, you know, I got a great idea. Why I'm going to make sure my son gets taken care of is I'm going to put him, how old was he or she?
He's 9. I also met a 10-year-old.
A 9-year-old. I'm going to send him on a 1,000-mile journey across the desert and up to the United States because I know Joe Biden's a nice guy and he'll take care of him. What a desperate act to have to take. The circumstances must be horrible. So we can do something about that. That's what the vice president's going to be doing. What I did when President Obama asked me to come and deal. I was in Turkey at the time. He said, you got to come home and take care of this. So we put together a plan and it had an impact. And so the question here is how we go ahead and do this, what we do. There's no easy answer.
There's no easy answer. That's a politician talking to you. Because Trump proved there is an answer. And it's actually quite simple. You hold head of state of those countries accountable. You just heard them. $700 million per year is going to go to rebuild their country. Because that's now your responsibility. You're their mommy and daddy. Congratulations, in case you didn't know. $700 million. Do you know how many homeless veterans and children here in America that could take off the streets? It's astounding, the thinking of President Biden, Harris, and the rest of the Democratic Party. It's just madness. Okay. So the next interesting part of this press conference came about voting rights. And the interesting question was, how are you going to stop Republicans? And my first response when I was watching it was, what the hell does the Republicans have to do with it? You own the House, you own the Senate, and you own the presidency. What do you care? But there's one thing they don't own. Because you can't steal every election. And the state elections, most legislators are still run by Republicans. So here is the next question.
Mr. President, I want to go back to voting rights. And as Yamiche mentioned, Republican legislatures across the country are working to pass bills that would restrict voting, particularly Democrats fear impacting minority voters and young voters, the very people who helped to get you elected in.
Now, I just want to stop it right here because her terminology is what caught me. She said Republicans want to restrict voting. That's not what they want. It's a gross misinterpretation of what Republicans want. What Republicans want is fairer elections. They want them to be fair and honest and transparent. So that's the most important thing. So listen, we have a leftist journalist trying to set the president up to bash Republicans. That's all she's doing. She's setting the table.
November. Are you worried that if you don't manage to pass voting rights legislation, that your party is going to lose seats and possibly lose control of the House and the Senate in 2022?
What I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick. It's sick. Deciding in some states that you cannot bring water to people standing in line, waiting to vote. Deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work.
Okay, so we got to stop right there for a second. Because two things. One, the water thing is nonsense. And not one, and I had to go do my research on it because I was like, who the hell's doing that? And there was not a single state rule that said you can't bring water out to someone. Come on. It's ridiculous. Second, to sit there and say that Republicans are somehow trying to restrict 5 o'clock. Listen, Republicans are getting out of work at 5 o'clock. Anyone who's running an election knows that from 4 to 8 is Republican spike in votes. Because we're actually getting out of work. From 6 a.m. to 10, from 4 to 8, Republicans are going to work, coming home from work. So why in hell would a Republican want to restrict ending voting at 5 o'clock? They're just making this shit up now. Because also, again, went back and looked. Who wants to stop it? And I found one, but it was in Michigan, and it was an amendment put in there by a Democrat. Because Democrats would love to see voting end at 5. So to then to sit there and say it's a Republican thing. It's just friggin' nonsense. But let's continue with the nonsense.
Deciding that there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances. It's all designed, and I'm going to spend my time doing three things. One, trying to figure out how to pass the legislation passed by the House, number one. Number two, educating the American public. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters.
Okay, Republican voters that I know. Who are they? I could tell you. They're the never Trumpers. They're the never Trumpers. That's who they are. To sit there and think that Republicans are supporting that nonsense is ridiculous. Yeah, but your rhinos are. Your rhinos will. Ain't no one in this Senate, maybe Romney, maybe Collins, but the Republicans that you know are not true Republicans. Let's be honest. Let's continue.
The folks outside this White House. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about voters. And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, this is gigantic, what they're trying to do.
Yes, because it's so wrong to ask for a voter ID. It's so funny. And again, I think minorities, because this is, they always bring up Jim Crow. And it's racist that you're asking for an ID. But shit, if you want to go see him, you got to do an ID. And to think that minorities don't know where to get an ID, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's insulting. I would be insulted if I was a minority to sit there and say, when I listen to the president go, oh, well, you're suppressing black voters because you want voter ID. Like, they can't go get one. They don't know where to go. Really? Or is he really talking about illegal immigrants that are here illegally that are going to go and vote for Democrats who don't have IDs and can't get IDs because they're here illegally? That's who they're talking about. They want those votes because without them, they lose. He talked about absentee ballots. Listen, the rule always was if you're going to be out of the country and unable to be here to vote, you could file by absentee. That's what Republicans are talking about. We're going back to the old system because, as was shown with this election, mail-in voting is chock full of fraud. Signatures are not being verified. You have more votes than voters in states. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, more votes than voters. But there's nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing to see. Just close your eyes and go to sleep. No. We're done with that. We're done with that. Because without mail-in voters, sir, you're not in an office. It's ridiculous. But again, he's trying to pull and play the same routine over and over. It's racist. And it's unfathomable that Republicans would try such a thing. IDs. Oh my God, the thought. Ridiculous. Now, the next two are very interesting to me because it kind of showed me, again, everyone who knows me, I hate Washington. I absolutely despise that city. I love going there to check it out. But the people there, politicians, disgust me. And if you listen to these next two clips, I think you're going to see why. Now you got to pay attention. And this is like one of those things where a little hint for you guys is that, I want you guys to pay attention to it because it's very important that you pick up on these signs. Okay? Cut.
Says you have only spoken to each other once since you took office and that you have moved far left since taking office. Do you see it the same way he does? Have you rejected bipartisanship?
No, I haven't at all. I've been meeting. When's the last time a president invited the opposite party down at least a half a dozen times to talk about issues, everything from how we work. We're working with a group of 20 members of the Senate right now and House on how we reestablish our ability to make computer chips and how we get ahead of the game, how we can work together. We're working together on a bunch of things. But look, I know Mitch well. Mitch knows me well. I would expect Mitch to say exactly what he said. But this is a matter of making sure that I would like elected Republican support. But what I know I have now is I have electoral support from Republican voters. Republican voters agree with what I'm doing. And so
he would expect Mitch McConnell to say that. Now, two things here. One, the $1.9 trillion stimulus package had no input from Republicans. The Republican Party asked multiple times to sit down with President Biden and talk about the stimulus package and how they can make it a bipartisan bill. And that was rejected every time. So to say that, Republicans didn't want to work with them is ridiculous. And the second part, he said, I would expect Mitch McConnell to say that. Keep that phrase in your mind as we go to the next clip. Give me number 13. Thank you.
And begin.
If I may ask one last question, have you had any talks with Senate Republicans who are threatening this administration with not considering the immigration legislation that was passed in the House until the situation at the border has been resolved?
No, because I know they have to posture for a while. They sort of got to get out of their system. This is but I'm ready to work with any Republican who wants to help solve the problem or make the situation better.
He would expect the Republicans to posture. So, could anyone tell me what he's really saying? Is anyone putting everything together? Because what he's really telling you, well, first of all, I want to give someone an opportunity. If you can tell me exactly what he's talking about with those last two clips, what's the common theme? Call me 203-679-9610. Because it's extremely important that people understand what's going on in Washington again. What's going on is this business as usual. Trump is gone. Because you know who didn't posture? Who didn't play theatrics? Donald Trump didn't. He didn't give a shit about whether he had Republican or Democrat support. He went and friggin' did it. He forced Democrats and Republicans to come to the table because he went straight to the people. He wasn't posturing. He wasn't telling Mitch, hey, go do your thing. Go let it all out. So then we could all get back together and screw the friggin' taxpayer. And make it seem like we're working together. The swamp is filling back up with the same BS that's been going on for the last 50 years before Trump got here. Trump didn't need the posture because he had a direct line to you. And that is what everybody feared in Washington, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Now both sides are back to playing their BS games. Oh, we're going to look like we're offended here. We're going to look like we're fighting back against so we can raise money. When really, both parties down there are trying to stick it through the back end. And giving it up you the back end. Those last two clips tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in Washington. Business as usual. Make it look like we're doing something, but we're profiting for ourselves. Because at the end of the day, they don't give two craps about you. And so far, everything that's been passed proves that is true. And they're hoping that the uninformed outweigh the well-informed to get to the voting booth. We live in crazy times, people. We live in crazy times. You guys need to get out there and make sure you're sharing this information. Let people know what's going on. So, that was the end of his press conference. Now, can anyone tell me if you watched it or if you listened to the question I just showed you, what was missing? Can anyone tell me what was missing? Because they touched on voting rights. They touched on immigration. They touched on China, which we'll get into next week because that's going to be an hour-long conversation. And they talked about, oh my God, what was my fifth one I was going to say? See, I just forgot what I was about to say. And all the questions were predictable. Oh, I'm sorry. The other one was whether or not he's running for re-election, which he says he has every intention of running for re-election because that's the most important thing that reporters are worried about is making sure, are you going to run again? Is Harris still going to be your vice president? That's the important things that we need to talk about. But if you're watching, there are a couple of things that you might have maybe noticed during that press conference. One was the fact that every question had the answer written in his book. And he read it, and if you watched it, he was reading it word for word out of his book. Now, if you remember last week, I talked about a request from the Biden administration. And they asked the press corps, we're going to do a press conference, but can you just give us the questions that you want to talk about? And they said no, because they had to. They can't just say yes. But if you watch the press conference, every question that he was asked was prepared. Answer was prepared for him. And he read it right from his book. And then if you notice where all the questions came from, every single one, 100% liberal networks. Not a single conservative was able to answer the question. Not one. Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, none of them. Not a single conservative network, publication, newsprint, nothing. Not a single conservative question. So, was this a news conference or is this propaganda? Because he still gave absolutely no specifics on anything. It was just blame Trump and platitudes. We're outraged on what's going on, but we ain't doing shit to fix it. And we created the mess, but we'll just blame it on Trump. Even though Trump never had this problem because he dealt with it quickly. And he dealt with it by going after what they care about the most. Money. These Central American countries don't care about their citizens. They care about the money coming in. And America's a big piggy bank. Big piggy bank. They're taking your wallet. It's absolutely maddening. And it would be scary. It would be scary if it wasn't true. So let's see. Now, I wanted to point out a couple things because, anyone who knows, I am a huge Rush Limbaugh fan. I took his death pretty bad because I think he's a man that cared about truth and informing the people. So one of our listeners, Sean McDonald, was nice enough to find a Rush Limbaugh teddy bear. It's our new mascot, by the way. So he'll be sitting here along with Rush, looking over us. And again, it gives me guidance on how and why I do this. I don't do this for the attention. I do this because I love my country. I love my state. I love my city. And I love you. And I want to make sure that you guys are informed about what's going on. I understand it's a crazy friggin' world out there. Everybody here is working huge amount of hours just to get by. And I know how aggravating it can be to sit there and watch our country go down the drain. I just don't want you to think there's nothing you can do about it. We live in the greatest country God has ever made. And it's our job to preserve it. It's every one of our responsibilities to make sure we're doing what we need to do. So I'm just reading through some of your comments here. Old man Joe, not our president. Listen, he is our president. For better or for worse. He is our president. I know people, that's a Democrat thing. Oh, like Donald Trump, he's not my president. Yeah, he is. President Biden is my president. For good or for bad. Do I believe he won the election? No. No. Not for a second. But Trump and them failed to prove that he did. So he is our president. And I don't like playing that game. That's a liberal game. Liberals cry and whine. We could all bitch and complain. But unless you're willing to do something about it and get out there and next election, make sure that your friends are going out there and voting, we have no one to blame but ourselves. I don't believe in bitching and making excuses. It serves no purpose. So I just want everyone to think about that. Have you done what you needed to do? Did you do your part in making sure that we're saving this country? Everything your pop is on a roll. Oh, I think you're referring to Joseph's comment. Yes, Hanson. Trump did announce his reelection. My question is, do you honestly think that Joe Biden is still going to be president in 4 years? Now, don't get me wrong. Biden looked good today. Biden looked really good today. He had a couple of moments where, he kind of lost his train of thought. But crap, I do that. I did it twice here today. So did he do a good job? He did what he needed to. He did what he needed to do to kind of put those thoughts to rest. But again, he was reading everything out of his book. So is that a true test? No. Then again, if you don't believe me, go back and watch the video. Everything was read. And when he did try to ad-lib, he lost his train of thought. But he's 70-something years old. So, and we all knew this before he even won the presidency, which is, again, why they left him in a friggin' bunker. Pitching with Joe Vollano. Craig, Craig always joins us, and I thank you, Craig, because I respect Craig. I like Craig. But Craig, you're yet to ring that phone and tell me. Tell me where I'm wrong. You can't, because you know I'm right. You could call it bitching. But what facts have I shown you tonight that tells me I'm wrong? You know the number, 203-679-9610. By all means, give me a call. Yeah, Sean, I wish we could talk about Hunter, but that's gone. You're not going to hear about that anymore. That's going to be buried away. It's just going to be buried away with everything else. Elections have consequences, and that's one. All right, what else do we got here, guys? Good comments tonight. We're just Tony Ann. If that was true, then Bloomberg would be president. Listen, money doesn't buy elections. If that was the case, Hillary Clinton would be president. People don't vote against something, they vote for something. That's why Trump won. They knew what Hillary was. They knew what Donald Trump was. But Donald Trump was honest. And when he got into office, he did everything he said he was going to do. So listen, all the money in the world cannot buy an election. Bloomberg and Hillary both proved that. Well, you guys got a lot of questions today. A lot of comments. And he did. So, Sean, Biden did contradict himself many times. He said he would send unaccompanied minors back on an airplane, which I didn't get to do that clip. But he said he would send them back. But that was what Trump was doing. And that's what Biden just 2 weeks ago was saying was wrong. But again, you didn't hear that. It was in your imagination. Don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. Stop listening. It's only what they say now is what matters. They don't care what they said 2 weeks ago. Come on. What's wrong with you? Stop paying attention. They didn't buy the right people. Tony, and I love you. So, I could sit here all day long and just talk about the hypocrisy that is Washington, D.C. But we all know what it is. It's disgusting. And it was on full display today. So, what did we learn today? 1, everything's Donald Trump's fault. 2, there's nothing to see here as far as the southern border. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Of course, reporters still aren't allowed there. Again, if that was Donald Trump saying, no, you can't go to the border and see these facilities. Oh, friggin' Washington and everything would be on fire. But since it's Joe Biden, oh, well, COVID. Okay, but you're letting 20 senators and congresspeople go. You can't bring a pool reporter and a cameraman? 1? What are you hiding? Of course, we all know. You have kids in cages down there. You have thousands and thousands of children packed in, sleeping on the floor, haven't seen the sunlight in 2 to 3 days. 10 times worse than any president had. And you can't see it because that would make us look bad. It's crazy. Why am I... What? Hold on. Yeah. It's being a little weird, my camera. I don't know why it's doing that. But it's okay. No worries. Okay. The American flag. I have a custom flag coming. So we'll have that hopefully another week. Hopefully by next week we'll have the flag. And it's a really cool flag. It is an old Betsy Ross flag. It is a wooden flag that's being made. I believe it's in Kentucky. And it will be shipped up here. And it will go right next to my man Rush. Now, Rush always was a huge fan of the Betsy Ross flag. And I love the Betsy Ross flag. If anyone doesn't know what the Betsy Ross flag is, it's America's first flag. It is the 13 stars in a circle with the same, obviously, stripes. So that hopefully will be here next week. The order went in like 2 weeks ago, but they're all handmade. So it will be here. So again, and if there's anything, look at it, even my lighting's starting to come in. But yeah, so that'll be here next week. So next week we're going to talk about China and we're going to talk about guns because that's what they're coming after. They're trying to come after our guns with the mandatory buyback. So we're going to talk about that. Even though half the idiots that I hear, like, of course, our 2 dumbasses here in Connecticut, Murphy and Blumenthal, who have no idea what the frig they're talking about when it comes to gun control. We'll talk about their dumbass comments. And we'll talk about what the Biden administration has in store. Because he said, even during the campaign, that he was all for a mandatory buyback, which means confiscation. So we'll talk about that next week. I once again thank you all for joining us today. I'm extremely excited that you were here. I think we had a great show, great comments. Of course, I want you guys to call in and interact. You know, I hope you guys are entertained. I hope you're informed. That's my goal. Because if you're not entertained, you're not going to pay attention. So any questions, always feel free to email me, straighttalkjv@gmail.com. Or you can just, again, leave your comments here on YouTube, Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. Make sure you go to the YouTube page, like it, and subscribe. It helps greatly. And again, like our page on Facebook, Straight Talk with Joe Vollano. Make sure you go to the page and like it. So until next week, my friends, I will see you. Be well, be safe, and use common sense. Use good judgment. I love you. God bless this great country, and God bless all of you. I love you guys. I will see you next week.